Hello everyone and welcome back. We're continuing along with our modeling here of the mid-poly slash blockout. And if you guys remember, in the last part I sort of brought together this, I guess sort of like a master plan as to like how exactly we're going to go through everything. And we ended off on step 3, which is sort of pointing at this latch that's sticking out. So I was doing some more research into it and just kind of trying to understand the shape a little bit better, and I came up with this sort of breakdown of everything that's going on. So we have this outlined in red, this sort of metal piece that's capping off the circular tube, which will be connecting a bar from side to side. So we have that set up. This blue piece is this independent latch that we can sort of flick on and off, I guess, based on this sort of grip here. But the big thing is in green that I have sort of outlined a little bit. So what this essentially is this guy right here. So we have made this piece, more specifically this kind of swoosh, not as detailed as we need it to be. So it's good because we have it set up where everything's kind of spaced around it properly. And even on this side, we did modify it a bit just to sort of get everything in place. But it seems that both of these, after looking at them in much more detail, are different on both sides. They're more of a welded onto the bottom of this sort of style. It seems to have an opening in the middle. It sort of splits open. There's obviously a spring here. And all in all, the whole shape is completely different. It doesn't mean that we've wasted our time with what we've done before, because like I said, it's good to know that we have this piece ideally where it should be and everything's genuinely grounded in where it should be. But all in all, we are going to have to do a little bit of work to get things to this design and this shape here. So first of all, what we can do is, as we can see, this sort of goes all the way back to the very end. So we're going to have to kind of adjust the bottom of this and kind of raise everything up a little bit. I'm just selecting these faces here. Yeah, more or less, it's much more of like this thickness. But then there's a welded part that makes it seem to be a lot thicker. So if I deselect this, I just want to double check that this isn't really messing with anything else, which it doesn't seem to be, which is good, which is going to make this a lot easier for us to work with. So we can raise that up. It also reveals that this sort of fake curve that we put in here is actually supposed to be a part of a curve from this piece, so we can go ahead and grab this edge loop and pull it forward. I'm just going to isolate this again. And I'm definitely trying to be careful with not accidentally ruining anything by not sort of understanding if I'm moving parts and not looking. It seems like we have a hole here. Odd, I guess we must have deleted that at some point and just failed to fill it in. So we can go ahead and do that right now. I'm curious, is this side... Okay, this side's welded together, so we might be able to just borrow from that. I can grab this face here, grab our smart mesh tool, smart duplicate, center pivot, move this guy over here, and we should be able to just snap it in if we invert the normals. So I'm just snapping it into place. It seems like, yeah, we're gonna have to add in some cuts to make this work. More specifically, it seems like we just need to add in one cut. So I'm just going to add in a cut right about there. I'm just sort of eyeballing it so I can then snap this guy here. And then a cut from here to here so that this face on the inside we can just delete like that. We should be able to combine these guys. Merge the vertices, and everything should be fine. Yep, okay, that's all good. Cool. So yeah, that was actually pretty simple. So now let's actually go ahead and get this key shape into place. It shouldn't be too difficult. One thing to note though is that I feel like by raising this piece, by raising the piece we just did, it might affect how this is looking, because I was basing a lot of it based on how low this was. So we might be able to get away with raising this a little bit. For now, I'm going to leave it just because I haven't really gathered any appropriate reference to make sure that's accurate, so that we can just focus on how this piece is laid out. I'm going to go ahead and actually delete all of this. Same on the other side as well. Like so. I do like this piece though, because it sort of gives us a guide as to where we can connect things. And because of so, I kind of want it to be on both sides. So I'm going to go to Mesh. Where is it? Edit Mesh. Extract. So now it's its own mesh. We can center the pivot on this, or in fact, we should move it to the center of the model. I'm snapping it right here because we know this is centered in the middle. We can go ahead and I'm just freezing transformations, deleting history. I always tend to do that before I mirror anything. I'm going to mirror it over X. And now we have it on both sides. We sort of have a reference point as to where we can attach things. Cool. I'm also going to have to close up these holes, since we created those for the piece we already had in there. Just going to go and fill a hole and then delete these guys. Same on this side. Selecting the loop, shift right click, fill hole. Control backspace to delete those. And now let's get started on this piece. I want to have it on the other screen just for now, so I can have it a bit larger and I can get it a bit more accurate. If you guys would like, you can keep it on your screen. You can put it on a second monitor, a phone, whatever you have. But just for the sake of this, I want to make sure it's accurate. And just sort of get it looking good. But yeah, let's start with a cube, I guess, would probably end up working pretty good for this. Polygon primitives, cube. We can go ahead and isolate this. So it looks like I had an X here. Obviously got messed up, so I'm going to put another one in. Just doing that so that I can get this guy completely centered. We can sort of start molding our shape together. So, based on the reference, this starts at the front. Just holding V to, of course, snap that based on vertice. And then this goes back to where this kind of curves. This is where it starts to go down. Right about there. Okay, getting that in place. So it does take, or it does start to change shape quite a bit throughout. So from here, it seems to dip in, sort of has a bit of a part where it narrows. So rounded, straight, narrow, straight. Here it gets a bit wider. We can start to see it is a bit hollow here as well. And then it gets wider again here, and this is actually opened up. We can see sort of like one here and one here. I know it's not the easiest to see it in this reference, but there's another one. This one, yeah, where it shows that it is opened here. So we're going to have to go and make that. This, though, for this hole specifically, I'm not going to really have it open just because when we're looking at it as a model, it's probably going to be about this far away. And if the only purpose of it being open is to sort of get some more detail here, that's a lot of geometry. So I think I'm just going to sort of have this hole as a normal, and that should probably be good enough for that. Yeah, I think it's a bit much to do it otherwise. So it seems that this isn't totally level. Just snapping that down. And we can start by doing this little inset here. I'm also starting to notice that this should probably be a bit more forward. As well as these in general should probably be more forward. This is just one of those pieces where it's like it's all starting to kind of come together now. Yeah, it's all starting to come together now, so realistically things are relying on each other a lot more, and it's more difficult to just sort of say, okay, I'm going to randomly place these based on how I see it. Now it's more like things have to make sense together. So I'm actually going to combine these two things just to work on this shape a little bit more. And I'm even probably going to want to raise this up a tad. So I'm just grabbing these bottom vertices. Just raise it up a bit, just so it's not as aggressive. And that's looking a bit more accurate based on the new reference that I've got. But yeah, let's keep working on this. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get this narrow part in. That's going to be really quick and easy. Shift right click. It's about, well, it seems to be a little bit before this part curves, so I guess we can still afford to move this even closer. Something a bit more like that. Maybe not that much. Let's go with about there. So for this, let's go ahead and add that little indent. It's a very minor detail, but like I said before, all the little ones really do add up quite a bit. So I'm just adding in some edge loops in the middle. I'm going to be scaling this one in like so. And then hitting Control B just to bevel it. And just round it out a little bit. I might even want it to be a bit sharper, so if I grab all those, I can scale it in. And that's pretty much that right there. Simple and easy. From there, we can go ahead and round this out a little bit, just by beveling that edge. I don't want it to be like overly round or anything. I kind of want to start by beveling it like so, and then re-beveling it so it has a sharper angle. And then taking care of this one. Okay, nice. I think I could probably afford to also raise all these pieces up just a little bit. And then just adjust here. So now we're going to have to transition down a little bit, and there's a bunch of ways we could do this. We could actually be importing an image plane and just sort of copying it exactly. But I think since we have enough pieces in place, we can just sort of model around that and it should be fine. So in this case, I'm going to add another edge loop in right about here because we're going to start to have to transition this downwards. So let's grab this edge here at the very end. Start to pull it down. It's not going too far down or anything, but one thing to note is it goes down and then plateaus off a little bit. So I'm adding in another edge, snapping this one down to here, and just sort of putting this into position as I see fit. More like so. I also want to see if I can play with this thickness a little bit and see if it's better suited to be a bit bigger or a bit smaller. I think we're going to start smaller actually, since we're going to have to make this piece kind of double-sided. You know what I mean in a little bit. Essentially, it's going to be hollow in the middle, but extend on both sides out. So I guess we can accommodate by that by having it start a little bit thinner. Oh, this is another thing to note. So this is something that has actually been affected by the changes of shape that we've done. This seems to be not correctly slotted in. I'm going to freeze transformations and delete history so I can just sort of move this into place. Right about there looks fine. Okay, cool. Right, so this is going to start to split into half at some point soon. As soon as we start curving, it splits into one side and then a mirror on the other side. Before we do that though, I'm going to add a little bit of a hole in here just to sort of match this shape. Very minor detail, but it's something we can bake into a normal, so I'm not too concerned with it. Like, it should be totally fine. It's not going to cost any geometry or anything. So let's select these faces. I'm going to just skinny this out a little bit just so we can see it a bit more visibly, or a bit more clearly. Yeah, I kind of want it to be like right there. For this guy, we're just going to be doing a Boolean. We've done these before plenty of times, so that should be easy. It also seems like the hole's on the other side, which is good. Once we're done this, I am going to mirror it over, but it's very clear that there's a lot of changes, so it's just going to act as more of a base. It's just good to know that there's already a hole in here, just so that when I do mirror it over, it's just going to save us a little bit of time. Yeah, so to do that, we've done it before. Going to go to create, polygon primitives, cylinder. Just going to rotate, holding J to snap it. Get it roughly into position. Seems to be right about here after this transition, which I might even extend out and then raise up. Yeah, something like this. I'm just glancing back and forth at the reference before I add a Boolean, because that's a lot of extra geometry to sort of have to manage. And if I don't have to worry about it sooner, then I won't. I'm gonna bring this in. And I'm tempted to say I could even move this in. We're starting to get this shape a little bit better. I know this is kind of on the end, but it seemed to be a bit too long otherwise. So let's get this guy into place. Isolate these. Cut in a decent amount, like so. I'm making it a little bit bigger than I want, just because when we smooth everything, it's going to get smaller and smaller. But yeah, that should be fine. Let's go ahead and save, because it's a Boolean operation. Okay, so select our main mesh, select our bool mesh. Let's get this guy open again, make sure it's on difference, new Boolean operation, and cool. Clean up, delete history and base objects. And if we take a look, it should be good. It's automatically made these lines just to make sure that it doesn't sort of freak out with all this weird geometry coming out of nowhere. I don't want this edge on this side though, so what I'm going to do is make some more connections here. Not that. So I can go ahead and delete this one, just because I know we're still manipulating the side, and if there's an edge going through it, it just instantly becomes a bit more of a challenge to work with. Okay, cool, that's in place. So now this is where it kind of splits off into two pieces. I'm still going to model it as one for now, and then we can hollow it out afterwards. But regardless, we have to make it thicker. So I'm going to bring this in, extrude out once again, and extrude the two faces on the side so we can make it a bit thicker. I'm just careful that it doesn't sort of eclipse this line here, because that's going to be a bit more difficult to deal with when we're making our low poly. If it's really close, the edges are just going to be kind of unnatural. Okay, cool. So we have these edges here. Now we sort of have to curve it and make this shape so it curves. It sort of accommodates these two bolts. We sort of have this nub, some interesting shapes, and then it just sort of heads up to this circular piece up here. So let's go ahead and make our way around that shape. I kind of want to make it a bit easier on us though, just by merging these guys off to the side. And that way, we only have one face we have to extrude and worry about. So let's just work with it that way. I'm going to extrude this forward again and just sort of tuck it into here. So then we can grab this bottom face and play with it. It should be a bit easier to work with. But it is a bit thick, so what I'm trying to do is grab this edge loop here and just pull it in a little bit closer. And maybe I should pull this one back. Okay, we can start to extrude down. And right now, let's just get a really crude, like, wrap around that just connects back up here. Just so we have some geometry to work with in the first place. And then this seems to be straight up the top, even though it's different at the bottom. Yeah, we'll leave it like that for now, just because it's something we can start to work with. Okay, so what is the shape that we're trying to make? Rounded, it plateaus, and then goes flat and high from here. It sort of flattens out right after this first bolt, and then just goes straight up. So we can use that knowledge to our advantage and just sort of have these guys be flat and straight. So I guess the most important part would be to get this guy dead on. I'm just going to have it level with the middle. Like so. I think I might actually need to be a little bit higher up. Something more like that. Okay, cool. The bottom part is where we're going to have to sort of adjust things a little bit more. So this roundness is going to have to be massaged out a little bit. I just kind of want to get it loosely in place, because then we're going to bevel it. And once we bevel it, it's going to be smoother, but it's going to have more edges. So if we don't get it right, it's just a lot more to sort of handle. That seems to be correct for now. But now let's focus on this bottom piece. This definitely gets thinner near the top. It's a bit more like that. So a bit more of the shape we're going for. This bottom part is definitely very faceted. You can definitely use some more geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and bevel that. In return though, I'm going to stretch these guys out a little bit to keep it more round. And it seems like near about halfway it gets a lot thinner, so we can start getting that shape to be a bit closer. Okay, I'm just trying to study this shape a little bit better. Let's see. Comes down. You can definitely see it's cut out a little bit there, so it seems to wrap the bolt, square. Okay. So I'm trying to think if I should be using cylinders to get this. And which bolts are they exactly wrapping? It seems like this one's rounded because of this bolt, but this and this don't seem... I suppose they are pretty level. Which I guess... No, they're not, because this one's going past it. Okay, this cutout is letting room for this to go through. And then this has a cutout to let the other one go through. Let's see if there's a better hint on this side. Seems to be a bit too different. This seems to be giving us some good information. So this one definitely seems like it's cut out, and this is going through and passing by. This bolt does seem to be attached to it. Okay, let's see how we have ours currently set up, because this middle pole... Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Especially with how we currently have it laid out. So this first bar is connected to this, the second one goes underneath. So let's prepare our model for that. We definitely have the space for it, which is good. That's lined up the way that it should be. But I do want it to be sort of rounded. So let's raise this up a little bit. So yeah, it definitely seems like it doesn't have as much room on the bottom, which is what I'm going for, because I'm then going to weld on a cylinder. And then from here, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to cut out a shape. And that should be pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and bevel that so it's not as harsh. I also am tempted to just kind of tuck this all in a little bit more. It seems like everything's pretty far apart. This then can be lowered. Okay, let's get that cylinder on. The cylinder is going to be right around there. Okay, the roundness isn't too off or anything, which is good. It's hard to work on this kind of piece when so many things are being hidden by other geometry in front of it. So let's get a cylinder in here. Just for convenience, we're not booleaning this or anything. Like, we need it to be something we can use a bit better. Just gonna drop it to 16, just so it's a bit easier to work with. J to snap on increments. And it was these two guys that we wanted it to be attached to. So let's roughly get it in position. We can go ahead and snap thickness to be correct. And then scale just using this gizmo here. So we're scaling everything but the thickness we just adjusted. And now that that's roughly in place, we can kind of eyeball it a little bit better. I guess what we could do is snap it to the center of this. And that way we know it's totally lined up. Scale it up a little bit. I'm just trying to see, this seems to go past that and then round around it, which is kind of how we have it set up. But I guess we could push it a bit further to be a bit more. Okay, so then if we look at these isolated, and what I'm actually going to do is go to lighting and just hit that so we just see the silhouette. Comes down, rounds around. I mean, it's not perfect. I don't like how harsh this is. But I guess we can still play with it. And a lot of the stuff will have some big assistance being rounded out inside a ZBrush. So yeah, we're getting the shape to be a bit better. I definitely recommend, yeah, turning the lights off, going into silhouette mode sometimes just to sort of get a better idea as to what you're looking at. And this is just too big still, I think. So I think it's a bit more like that. It's also a good time to just kind of check this out. Looks pretty cool. I guess that's not a big, not a lot of purpose to that. It's just interesting. But yeah, I guess the point is I kind of wanted this to be sticking out a little bit so you could see it. I think that should be fine. Let's go ahead and weld these two together the same way we've kind of been doing it before. And then from here, we're going to be cutting a hole out to sort of match this, cutting it out, and then once again have a rounded piece. So I guess we should probably actually duplicate this since we're going to be reusing it, and just stick it off to the side for now. But instead of doing a boolean, I'm just going to manually cut this. We've done it before just because I don't want to have to worry about weird geometry and things sort of like lining up in weird ways. Cancel. I guess I hit something wrong. Let me just double check something. Okay, cool. So yeah, let's get these two guys isolated, and I'm just going to be going to Control-Shift-X and just cutting around like we've been doing before. Actually, a much easier way would be to cut from this piece instead. We can cut along this line, because this is all excess geometry. We don't need to necessarily weld that in. It's not going to be doing anything for us. So let's delete all these excess faces we don't need. Okay. We can start to snap things in place. We are going to have to add in some cuts here. So one there, one there. We're going to go ahead and delete the faces on the bottom. And now we should be able to grab these verts and just sort of snap them into place. And we'll do some cleanup afterwards. Any kind of welding is going to sort of require that. But it's relatively quick and simple, so it should be fine. Okay, we can now go to Mesh, Combine, merge those vertices. I'm going to take these extra edge loops we made, merge them in. it was this one that was the extra. Merge all those pieces, and we're starting to get that shape a little bit better. Cool. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same for about this face, because it seems to be a little bit before the second metallic piece. I'm going to have a cylinder coming out of there, and then we'll cut a circle out in the middle. For that one, we will be using a Boolean, just because it's way more convenient. Yeah, and then I think we're going to have to raise this up a little bit. We're just going to continue chipping away at it, is essentially what I'm trying to say. Cool. Let's go ahead and do just that. So we kept the cylinder off to the side, which is good. We can use that as kind of a way to keep things very consistent. So let's go ahead and delete this face on the bottom. Get this guy roughly into position. This is good because we can kind of just rotate it and get it to be loosely in there like that. Now we're getting some weird shading over here. I'm going to try and auto smooth. Okay, that fixed it. It still seems like things aren't fully connected actually. Yeah, I must have overlooked that one. So yeah, let's just do the exact same thing for right here. So not a whole lot I can comment on this part, so I'm kind of sorry about that. Just trying to rotate it so it's at a good width. For when I cut it, it's not going to be too stretched or anything when I merge the vertices over. So let's go ahead and 1, 2, 3, 4. And complete it. Go ahead and delete all the tops. Just make sure we didn't delete too much. Okay, cool. Oh, one more. Yeah, let's go and snap this. I think my music paused. Give me a second. There we go. Yeah, I don't really use like Spotify or anything. I'm always just listening to music on YouTube. And I guess since they're trying to promote their like YouTube Red, they like pause their music when you're listening to it for too long. I guess it's kind of the same feature that Netflix is doing. Like there's legitimate reasons for it, but it's just annoying. Or maybe it's like advertiser reasons. I don't know. Either way, occasionally I have to go and do that. Cool, so now we can combine these guys. Merge the verts. Yep, sweet. It looks really chunky right now, but I can guarantee once we gut out the middle, it'll start to be looking a lot more appropriate. With that in place, I'm starting to notice that this is definitely seems to be a bit taller. It's really hard to judge because we don't have a cylinder in there, so I think what I kind of want to do honestly is just duplicate this guy and scale it out and just say like, hey, this is a rough guide for obviously not this nub, but I know I have some good reference of it. Like this metal piece here. Like I just want a rough reference because that's the only thing that's going to be directly blocking us. So let's get that guy in here. I'm going to color it black just so I know like, hey, this is temporary. We'll be getting rid of it soon. So it kind of blends in with the background and I don't have to think about it all that much. So that guy's going to be there. He's going to let us work around him. And even if it's close, like it's better than nothing. So yeah, this part is definitely, so it's straight, but then it gets much more full Like it's just in general takes up a lot more space than we're currently taking up. And maybe this is even higher. Just want to make sure I'm keeping this straight line. Okay, we're getting there. This also does seem to curve at the top. So let's go ahead and get that in. Just kind of like so. I'll just bevel it so it's a bit more elegant. And I think this is going to be a lot easier to work with if I just do that. Okay, we got our two rounded pieces in. It's just mostly here that we're failing to really emulate, and I think that's why it's feeling a lot smaller than it actually is. So let's kind of take a look at that. What's going on down here? So it's after this second screw. It's going up, but it's sort of extruded down. You know what? Before we do that, we should probably cut out this hole from the middle. Did I miss any vertices here? Or do I just need to auto smooth? Auto smooth it is. Cool. Yeah, so let's cut something out of the middle here. I might even want to say that these are a bit far apart. Something like that might be a bit more appropriate. Because then we get all this extra room to do this stuff. And also it kind of seems like the cut, it goes like round, cut, round, in like a kind of a sine wave. Okay, so we can cut that out now. Let's get a cylinder that we can work with. Create polygon primitive, cylinder. Rotate it in place. I think the other one we had 16 sides on, but we're cutting into something with this one, so it's a bit different. So I'm going to leave a little bit of an edge on each side just so I can snap it in, and it's going to be like a round, round, round. And this is definitely something that's going to be aided quite a bit by the auto smooth in ZBrush, because right now it's going to be a little polygonal, I think, but that's going to be fine for the time being. So let's go ahead and save. Okay. Select our main, select our Boolean difference. We can continue to adjust this guy a little bit. Scale him up maybe. Bring it down a bit more, kind of like that. And what I was saying earlier was just, yeah, taking these and snapping them in so there's no harsh edges. So now we can kind of take these and manually soften it a little bit better. Okay, cool. And then I'm just going to hit 3 as an example. Just throw in some edge loops and hit 3. Yeah, and it does a pretty good job of softening that out. And like the whole shape just becomes a lot better. And this is obviously not perfect because of how it's smoothing it, but this is closer to what we're going to be looking at in ZBrush. So let's just get rid of that. Delete those edge loops because we don't need them. And close out of that. Cool. Yeah, so the final part is just this, getting that right. The first part of that is going to be putting an edge loop. I guess we're going to need 2, so like 1 here and 1 here. That way we can extrude this down and get that little squared off shape here. Of course, I gotta massage it a little bit better than that. And definitely get rid of these edges. Just snapping them back. Merge those verts. But yeah, let's work on this guy a little bit. So it seems to be not too big. It's sticking out a little bit this way. Seems like this guy has got a bit going on. But then it leads into a curve. So what's the best way to do that? Let's add in another edge loop. Curve goes up, wiggles its way in, so curve. Might need another edge loop to get the look I'm wanting here. So curve, then sharp up. Then kind of like a general over, and then after that it just seems to go up. Make that a bit thinner. This definitely seems like more of a profound like lump shape, so I'm going to cancel that. Control bevel, Control B rather to bevel. Just snap this off. Same with this. Merge those verts. Just trying to see if it matches the same silhouette. Sticks out, round, up a bit, bumps out again. We can definitely work on this a little bit. Especially this part, I think needs to be a bit more defined. But once again, we can just test by adding our edge loops in and hitting 3. And the shape is more or less. It's doing a pretty good job of matching it. Minus here, this needs to be steeper. So in order to do that, I'm just going to tuck this in, tuck this in, pull this down a little bit. And that should probably do that. Okay. Seems like we got that. So what next? There's a couple things that we're going to have to add to this side to make sure it's correct. First of all, this connection piece up here needs to be worked on. I think we'll save that for the end. We're going to have to put in these bolts. That's a given. And then this sort of spring mechanism is actually another thing that we're going to have to add. I think the easiest thing to start with is going to be the bolts, but there's no point in doing that until we hollow it out. So let's go ahead and hollow this guy out. Yeah, it seems like once it drops down from here, see it gets wider, which we've implemented already. It splits into like two different pieces. First of all, since it sort of has this smoother transition, I'm going to go ahead and grab these two edges and pull them back. Not too far, but enough that it's going to aid with the smooth transition. And then to hollow this out, I think the easiest way to do it is to just, extract it. So I'm shift right clicking, making it its own mesh. I can then add a cut through the middle, select it, and with Control B, I can just sort of say, how thick do I want this to be on each side? Probably, well, let's take a better look at our reference, actually. Definitely has some decent thickness to it. 0.275? 0.325 rather. Let's see. 0.45. 0.35. 0.375. I'm gonna go with 0.4 actually. So now that we have this, it's really quick and simple. We can just select the edge loop and delete it. I guess the back seems to be a bit different. We can just add our edge loops in and just snap them. And as long as they're snapped, should be fine. There's probably some geometry that isn't making a lot of sense somewhere. That's why it doesn't automatically follow the edge loop. We're going to have to bridge these guys. Actually, that's exactly where it is, right here. It's because these aren't connected. Cool. Merge those verts up. And now, essentially, we sort of have to cap it. The easiest way to do that is just, I'm going to bridge this, and then on the end it's covered. So this should be one big opening now. I can just shift right click and go fill hole. It's going to cap it perfectly fine. Do the same thing on this side. Bridge. Select the whole ring and fill hole. Cool. So I'm going to delete these again because we're going to have to weld them back up. But that's essentially that. It's all closed off. And looking good. Yeah, that's what I'm wanting. It's also nice because it just makes it more interesting. Like when light plays off that, it's going to be really cool. We sort of have these two pieces. Very happy with how that ends up actually looking. So yeah, let's reattach it back up here because now it ain't working out too well. This should be a pretty quick and easy one though. Add a cut there, a cut there, add a cut here, and a cut here. Cool. Snap, 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 snap. Should be able to mesh combine, merge the vertices, and it'd be as simple as a fill hole to get that part. Awesome, so that part is more proper now, which is really, really nice. It's coming along good. I'm just looking at my reference. Let's add in these bolts. I just want to make sure that I understand what they're doing a little bit better. Because this bolt has a big pipe going through it. So I think let's see, how do I want to make this work? I might have this sticking into here, and then capped off on the other side, and then this capped off with this going through. Essentially saying that this piece is just attached to this, so it's bolted down. And then this is a separate piece entirely, and I think that's probably the best way to get it to work, because we can see a bolt here. And if I try and mimic that angle, it's kind of like that, where we'd see a bolt coming through. This would just sort of be attached in. So I'm going to start kind of cutting this guy up. Deleting that. Go ahead and make that level. And then I guess same with this side. Just following this over. So yeah, we have this guy attached. Which we're going to be switching up a little bit anyway. So yeah, I guess we totally have like free reign to work with this however we want it to be. Yeah, let's go ahead and put a bolt in there. Let's try and, like, I'm trying to work with this in a way that makes sense. And for me, that's going to first be by cutting a hole in this, and then capping it with a bolt on the other side, and then doing the same, I guess, all the way through it. So let's do that. Let's grab this. I'm going to smart duplicate it. So now we have this perfect cylinder. We're going to be using this as a Boolean mesh. Let's just get rid of this stuff on the end. Whenever you're using this Boolean, I can't remember if I said it before, you have to make sure there's no holes in the mesh. So I'm just going to deal with it that way. Let's just ensure all this lines up. If I drive this through, so right in the middle. Okay. I just feel like I can probably make these rounded parts a bit tighter on it. Let's just experiment with that. If I scale it in. I grabbed an extra edge there. If I scale it in, I'm just kind of put it there. Use these two edges to average it out. Should be fine. I'm just going to isolate it to double check. It's definitely a little chamfered here. So I'm going to want to go ahead and bevel that, just to give it a bit more roundness. Cool, and let's go ahead and do our Boolean. So I'm just driving this through. I'm going to save, of course, first. Clean up. delete history and base objects. Okay, so why exactly did I want to do this? Essentially because I want this slotting into something, and then when we smooth it in ZBrush, it actually curves into it, like it properly should. But also because, I'm just going to tuck this in a little bit better. Also because I want to be able to do the same thing, but put a bolt in there, and it actually has a proper cutout to belong to. Of course, I'm going to be using this plugin to sort of get the bolts in there. They seem to sort of be just a single straight line bolt. Where did that spawn? Windows, outliner. Hello? Screw? Here? I guess that's very weird. Okay, I guess it's over there. I'm going to color it red just so we sort of can keep track of it. I guess I'm going to be bringing all these into ZBrush, so I'm not going to continue to smooth them like we've been doing before. Let's rotate 90 degrees. Let's get it into position. I can snap it to this vertice to sort of know that it's centered. And I think you can sort of get an idea as to what I'm doing. This is also a great opportunity to just actually add the screws here, because if we look at the reference, there's already screws here. So I'm going to just plop one of these guys in here. And just let it be. But then of course we got to do it for the reason we brought it in. I'm going to, first of all, change my rotation from object to world. It seems like the gizmo was rotated funny because we rotated our object. But essentially I'm just going to tuck this guy in. And this is what I was more or less talking about. Having this just sort of like bolted into place. And then we can move this guy over. It seems that my movement gizmo is set to object. I'm going to set that to world as well. Rotate it around 180 degrees. Slot this guy in. Make sure none of them are kind of just facing the same orientation. And now we have these pieces connected. Cool. This second one isn't a bolt. It's kind of like a piece of the pipe is just sort of jammed in there. So we're going to have to adjust for that. But first, let's get the second bolt in. I thought I was confused about what the second bolt was for, but I think that it's honestly mostly just used to keep these two pieces together, which would make sense. Makes me question if these two are used to keep them together, but I don't think so. I think it's kept together up here, it's kept together at the end, it's kept together in the middle. We don't need two in the middle. That should be fine. So let's go ahead and we're going to be using the same size screw, so we're going to need the same size boolean. I'm going to go ahead and grab this and smart duplicate it once again. Delete the end piece. This is kind of just like deja vu. I'm going to grab the end caps and fill hole. Good. Let's just eyeball this guy into position. So we shrunk the other one. I'm thinking we should probably do the same here. Okay, cool. Just trying to keep it centered, but not too close to the edges, because that's gonna give us some issues when we smooth it. I kind of still want it to have a soft or a hard surface without it being too just rounded over the edge. That should be good. Let's go ahead and boolean that. This is a lot of geometry, but of course none of this is going to actually be geometry when we bake it down. Like, these holes are just going to be a flat surface with a screw that's a normal, just like in the first part. Sweet, and speaking of screws, let's get these guys in here. Just going to snap it to the top, snap it to the side. And just jam them in. Gonna have to do the same thing on the other side. Once again, will anyone see this? Highly unlikely. Like, unless I put a Marmoset viewer on the ArtStation post for this and someone jams the camera in, like, it's really unlikely that anyone's gonna see this. But it's all baked down information. It's not costing us anything to put this here. So we might as well do that. And then I'm just going to smart duplicate this. Center pivot. I'm going to put it in the middle and just sort of connect the two. One thing I'm trying to think about though is, do I want this to sort of be like a separate piece that's screwed in, or do I want it to be welded? I'd imagine it would have to be a separate piece screwed in, because there's no point in having screws if the center piece that's connecting them is welded between the two. The screw wouldn't need to be there at all. So I need this to be a separate piece, and since it's a separate piece, much like in the original demo we did at the start, I'm going to have to sort of do some things to it, such as sort of drag it in a little bit. I'm going to cap the ends. And then, just so we don't forget about it, I'm going to change the color of it to red. Make it pop a little bit. Cool, that's all starting to make sense. Like, I'm happy with how all that's turning out. The only thing that we have left to do on this specific piece is worry about the end, which is exciting, because then we can move on to the other side, connect it all, and finally get that bar across and be confident that we know that it's all working out. And as I say that, I just realized we didn't add the spring. We're gonna have to add the spring in. This spring right here, which should honestly be really easy, unless I'm forgetting something. I think it's literally just adding a hump here, a little boolean hole, spring. This is a boolean with a screw sticking out of it. That should be pretty easy. Yeah, let's go ahead and by adding the hump first. The hump is just going to be an extrusion that we bevel. So Control E, add some thickness to it. Grab the two edges. Control B. Boom. Merge all that. I'm going to go ahead and Control B this. This is a smoother transition. Of course, you guys know me. I gotta clean this up. Really don't like having geometry that's really bad like this. Same here. Cool. Go ahead and merge those vertices. Now let's add a hole to the middle. We've done this a million times. It's just another Boolean operation. I'm just taking a look back and realizing it's starting to get pretty complex. Yeah, it's definitely looking pretty good. Yep, I'm gonna have to make this a separate piece though. For all the same reasons we made the other one a separate piece. Okay, it's already cut in a little bit. Let's go ahead and make it red. Okay, and we can go and Boolean this guy now. Create polygon primitives, cylinder. We can make this, it's such a small hole, I don't mind making it like 14 or something. Like I said, I guess actually this one, I guess it's a hole, so we shouldn't bake it down, but at the same time, it is so tiny, I feel like we can just bake it down. That's one of those things we'll figure out when we're actually doing the proper low poly of it. The hole will be in the high poly regardless, so for now let's just worry about making it and making it accurate. So it's a bit bigger, but like I said, everything kind of shrinks a little bit when you smooth it. So I'm just accommodating for that. Okay. Delete history and base objects. It seems like it didn't automatically fill this in, so I'm just selecting the edges and going to bridge. Excuse me, and softening those edges. We got our hole in there. To add the spring, we're going to be using a helix. I feel like that should be pretty obvious. Create polygon primitives, helix. So helix is pretty much just a spring. The cool thing about this though is we can make a high poly spring and then just bake it down to a cylinder. So it's really, really cheap to actually make something like this. But there's a few things to keep in mind, and the reason I bring that up is because, yeah, it's a cylinder, but you can see that we have this piece sticking out of the middle. We're obviously going to have to hide that. We're going to have this extra piece sticking out from behind. Same with this piece that's wrapping on the screw, how it's sticking out from behind. Just because we can't bake down that information if it's coming from the center. Let's go into our helix inputs. Let's start to make this look a bit more like a spring. Give it a bit more geo. Turn the coils way up. Bring the height up. It's pretty tight. I guess I can keep the reference on the side while I do this. Max is at 20 coils, huh? Interesting. Either way, that's pretty much the shape we're going for. The only thing I'm worried about is if we Dynamax it, that it... Dynamesh. I've been watching too many Pokemon trailers. Oh my god. Dynamax it. Yeah, I just don't want it to sort of merge between each other. Pokemon's coming out in like 2 weeks or 10 days or something. Like, cut me a break. Um, I'm just going to, yeah, rotate this guy into position. Okay, ours is definitely too thick, and I feel like it's a bit late to adjust. Never mind. Sometimes when you rotate, it doesn't like when you adjust these settings, it just gets all crazy. Okay, cool. I'm noticing that the screw is kind of above this squared cutout, so we're going to have to stretch ours a little bit. I do kind of want to scale it in though. Tuck it in there a bit closer. Cool. Let's focus on getting the screw in because this part here is going to be a bit more manual, I guess. Yeah, let's get that screw. I guess, man, I'm just starting to think about how at the start of this chapter I was all focused on this side, but we're probably not going to get to that side in this chapter, or this part of the tutorial that I'm recording right now. But that's okay. It's still going to get done at some point. Okay, let's get that bolt in there. Sorry, I was just turning my music back on again. Yeah, let's just get a cylinder to roughly put in place. We're just going to punch a hole out. And for this guy, it's not going to go all the way through. The bolt's purpose is literally just to house the spring, more or less, just something for it to attach to. So I'm going to put it about here. Seems to be accurate to the reference. I also want to double check. Yeah, there's no spring on this side. Honestly, this side that we're doing next is going to be going so much faster than this one, just because we can just copy and paste and just make small adjustments accordingly. But regardless, we got to get this part done. I'm making excuses. Let's select these two. Just want to make sure this isn't going all the way through. Okay, we can Boolean it, so boom, boom. Get that in there. I'm going to select these faces. Once again, shift period to grow selection. Just scaling that in so it has a bit more of an interesting bevel to it. I'm going to grab those faces again actually and pull it out quite a bit. It feels like the bolt is sticking out way more than it is like inside of the metal. So let's find an appropriate bolt for this kind of situation. I guess we're just going to have to sort of work off of this guy. And like I said, I included some pre-made bolts in this tutorial package, so you can find those and use those. But what I mean by work off of them is essentially I'm going to grab these edges, if I can ever get my camera to line up, then add an extra edge loop here, and here, and here. The reason I'm doing that is because this is set up to be smooth when you hit 3, and I want those edge loops in there so it knows to be smooth. But yeah, this is more or less how it's portrayed in the reference image. It's just sticking out a little bit, which means we're going to have to grab this Boolean that we did and scale it in. I think from now on I'm just going to make every bolt red so I have a better understanding of where exactly it is. And just because it's on my mind really quickly, it's going to take 2 seconds. I'm going to smart duplicate this. I'm setting it up the same way I'm setting up all the other bolts, where it's resting in there, but it's a separate mesh. So I'm going to extrude that out, fill hole. Center pivot, I'm just sort of housing it in here loosely. Selecting the faces on the front. And just loosely mimicking that shape. It seems to be rounded. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're gonna have to just, I think the other side's the same. I'm just double checking my reference, but I think we already set that one up. Yeah, I might as well just duplicate it over to keep it consistent. Okay, cool. So now we know that that's consistent at least. So yeah, now we're just going to be wrapping these cables around where they're supposed to be. This has so much extra geometry. I think, looking at it now, I think we're going to have to redo the spring, just because when we bake it to a cylinder, we need as little gaps as possible, because we're only baking geometry. These gaps have no information, so when we bake it down, it's just going to be nothing, which is going to look terrible. So I'm going to remake the spring so it's much more compact, and it's going to be closer to the reference. Even if it means that the metal cables are stretching a little bit more, it's going to be a better result at the end. So let's go ahead and work on that. Turn the height up a little bit. Coils, I think we're just going to max them. Height, we can shrink. Radius is our biggest issue. And then the subdivisions are obviously crazy high, but that's okay. Yeah, we can just turn the width down and play with the width and the radius. To get more of a spring shape that we're happy with. Yeah, like this has much less space. Obviously when we bake it down, like it's pretty small. It should be fine. But yeah, it's just like this has much smaller gaps. So when we bake it down, it's just gonna be better. And then we could redo it if there's an issue. Like, as you saw, this did not take very long. So yeah, I'm happier with it having more travel distance on each side as long as I know the gaps are smaller. My only concern now is it kind of seems like it's just a bit too thick, but I think that's fine. Like in the grand scheme of things, from out here, just has to look springy more than anything. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it the way that it is. Just gonna be manually extruding this. Of course, we could extrude a spline and get it into position. But I'm just going to try and test this out first. Which, realistically, is kind of turning out to be a lot easier than I thought. I think for this, I will... Let me just pull it all back. I think I'll make the hole a normal, just because it's a lot of geometry for such a tiny piece. I'll delete those. Yeah, I'll just have this face resting against it, and then I'll have the connection piece resting on the other side of it, and then just bake everything down. Just because we're really not going to need that much geometry and information to sell something like this. Like, it's so tiny, it should be pretty easy to look right. Just trying to smooth it out, maybe adding an edge loop in. Just delete that one. Focus on the rotation. Yeah, we went crazy with the geometry on this one. Way too much. But yeah, you can tell that this hooks in the back. Obviously, this isn't ideal. Realistically, I'm going to delete all of this later on. This is just for the high poly. Because when we hit 3, it's smooth. That's all I'm looking for. Yeah. So we have this text back here, which is great. And then we see a little hook sticking out. I'm thinking of just using a Taurus for this guy. Just gotta make sure we have the same thickness, and then we should be good to just stick them into place. Yeah, pretty much just like that. I know scaling it right there just defeats the purpose of everything, but I need to have it be smaller overall. Yeah, so I can essentially stick this out. And then just delete the extra stuff we don't need. Yeah, so this is just going to be normal information, so it's never going to actually go inside. We can delete all of that. Let's set the scale to world so that we can flatten this guy out and snap it so it's flush here. I'm going to scale it just a little bit so it's covering the hole a bit more. And then we can actually just cap this, bevel it so it smooths out a little bit. And now it looks like it's gone through, it's hooked around. Yeah, we can mesh combine. And then when we smooth it, like it's a nice like soft hook going into there. I might make it less soft because it kind of needs to have more tension to it. Because it is a big metal spring after all, it shouldn't really have a soft transition. Yeah, that looks a bit more right. Okay, cool. Now we're just gonna have to do the other thing wrapped around on the other side, and then I think that'll do it for this part. We've accomplished a lot in this part, and I think we've made a lot more sense of how everything's turning out, and then it's gonna make the other side a lot easier. Yeah, this was definitely something we overlooked. We'll take care of this in the next part, because it'll help with the other side anyways. So let's wrap this. In fact, we can probably just duplicate this. Smart duplicate, center pivot. Okay, it seems our rotation's a little off. Maybe we can't use this piece just because of its size. It's okay, we can just make another one. scale it. I'm just trying to get something that's roughly the same thickness, but wraps around this comfortably. Drop the radius a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna have to make this thicker, and to do so, we're gonna have to bring this guy out a little bit. Just checking if these connect. .22, 0.25. Yeah, we can get away with that. Merging it, it'll be a bit of a difference in thickness, but should be fine regardless. Let's have this down on it. We can definitely pull these closer. So this will probably connect to the top. Let's go ahead and save, just so if we mess up, we can go back. I'm just going to delete the bottom pieces. Maybe that's too many. We can just do what we did before, where we extrude this. I'm trying to just gradually shrink it. I don't know if we gave these the same amount of subdivisions, though. That could be an issue. So I'm just going to isolate these two. I guess we can clean up down here. So let's see how many edges we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's perfect. We can just delete every other edge, and then they should be able to bridge over just fine. So now, select the two, shift right click bridge. Oh, are they still different meshes? Yep, okay. Mesh combine, bridge, and now we can start making sense of all of this. Wait, if I delete this edge loop, it'll have the most tension this way. And then with this end capped, we can bevel it just like the other one. It's a bit wonky for sure. I wonder if I bevel it. No. Just has to be raised up a little bit, like so. Because that way when we do smooth it, it's looking a bit more like that. I'm still thinking this looks, especially compared to this looks very flimsy. Should be more like this. Yeah. Maybe even if I delete that. Now when I smooth it, there's proper tension between the spring. Okay, cool. Let's just make sure all of this is one piece. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a different color. Let's go green for now. And I think that'll do it for this part. I'm gonna go ahead and save. All right, cool. How long was this? Okay, this was definitely the longest part by far. But we got a ton done, and I think we're making good progress. We're actually getting some good detail in there as well. From now on, I'm going to be actually putting in these bolts and putting in these caps and all that kind of stuff. When we do bring this kind of stuff into ZBrush, we're going to have to sort of redo the design of this, but we never really did them to begin with, so that's to be expected. I'm just talking about like things like the bolts and like cutouts like that, because when we look at this guy, like there's cuts and bolts, and like these have a very defined shape and all of that. So yeah, we can do that when we get to it, but that's going to be in the high poly section. For now, we got to get the bulk of this stuff done for the blockout. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. That'll do it for this part. We're going to do the same thing on the next side, like I said, but it's going to be a lot easier since we have all the groundwork sort of done. But yeah, this was a good part. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. See ya!